Alright guys, welcome back. Since last we spoke, I've discovered some new lands down to the south, two new civs and a city-state. More on those later. I've also discovered this new barbarian camp. I've been trying to take care of it. But all that stuff isn't really why I want to take this time to talk to you. I want to talk about the tech tree a little bit. As you can see, we're researching animal husbandry. And we need to figure out a plan for what to do going forward. And this doesn't have to be a hard plan because a lot of Civ is about improvisation, but we do need a trajectory. We need a specific trajectory that we're going to go on. So let's go ahead and scroll to the end here. Now, the reason I've taken you all the way to the future era with the unrevealed technologies is because very often in Civ games, it's helpful to visualize where it is you want to get and then work backwards, so that you can institute a plan much more effectively. Now, it's not immediately clear right now, but the tech we want to get is this one down here. Unrevealed 524 turns. That means at our current rate, it would take us 524 turns to research this tech, but don't worry, it's not going to take that long. Once we get there, we'll get through it much faster. Instead, what we should do, right, rather than worrying about how long it's going to take us to research that specific tech, is look at the path that we need to take to get to it. Right, so to get to this one, we need nanotech. To get to nanotech, we need composites, and a whole slew of techs before that. And one thing that you could do, in theory, is just select this one, right? And you see all these numbers pop up, and numbers on technologies behind it as well. This is the game creating a queue for researching the technologies. So this means that the game on its own will organically research these technologies in this order to get here. But if you notice, it skipped a very important part, which is rocketry, which gives us access to the spaceport, which is a special addition to our city that we need in order to be able to do any of our scientific victory stuff. So it can be good in the short term creating this sort of research queue, but it's not worth it to span the entire game. No, instead, let me go ahead and deselect by reaffirming my desire for animal husbandry. Instead, what we want to do is go back to that atomic era and that information era, right? And again, try to work further back. So in order to get here to our last project, we need nanotech. But we also need satellites, because satellites houses the moon landing project, which we need to, again, make progress in our scientific victory. Now, in order to serve all of that, we will need lots and lots of production in our cities. That means that we're going to need technologies and improvements and buildings that help us generate production as well as science. A really good example of that comes right here with nuclear fission in the form of a nuclear power plant, because not only does it give us +4 production, it also gives us +3 science. Now, it can be a little pricey to maintain, both in terms of gold and in terms of the uranium that we will need. But this is a great example of a sort of marker that we should strive to reach. So we know we need nuclear fission, we know we need rocketry. Okay, terrific. What else do we need? Well, to get to rocketry, we need chemistry, right? So this sort of last couple of eras suddenly clarifies for us what we need to be going for. We need to build lots of science, which means we absolutely must hit chemistry. We must hit scientific theory to get Oxford University. We must hit education to get university. We must hit writing to get a library. Now, all of that's well and good, right? We've already researched writing, and we are on our way, relatively, to researching education. But we also need apprenticeship, because apprenticeship will give us the industrial zone, which is a district specifically meant for increasing production. So, right, what this retrospective view gives us is the knowledge that we need to build our civilization right off the get-go in such a way that by the time we get to the end game, we have high production output and we have high science output. Okay. Now that we have all of that information under our belts, right? let's go ahead and take a look more at the map that we have. We have found a desert. And as I've explained in my preamble, deserts for Australia can be a great thing. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of pastures around. There is a pasture out here, but it would be ill-advised to settle this near another civilization, in this case the Netherlands. The Netherlands, I've played against before. They're a fairly aggressive civilization when it comes to expanding, and they're not afraid to get into wars. So we don't want to settle that close. We want to keep our distance. We want to keep our city safe and focus instead on production and science. We're already building out here a campus. We're building it on some very pretty land, as you know. So our next objective, right? We have our first city set up. We have our research going. We need to figure out where to settle next, and that is something that I'm going to briefly talk about right now and then talk more about later. Alright, so since last we spoke, I went ahead and I cleared the barbarian camp that was out here, and I moved our settler to this location. Now, I just briefly want to talk about why it is that I am considering moving down here. First and foremost, right, it's in the desert, and that's something that I think will actually be quite useful for us if, as we talked about, we manage to get Petra. Now, this is a little bit of a gamble because Petra, right, obviously brings us lots of benefits. It'll allow our city to grow very quickly, get gold much more quickly for our empire, and potentially be able to produce things very, very efficiently because all of these desert hills will contribute to our city's production. So that's sort of the frame that I'm going to be working with here for now, right? If I settle right here, I'm settling on average land. I have access to average land, but I also have access to charming land and even breathtaking land. Is this one breathtaking? No, that one's just charming, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and settle right here on the coast by the river. Founding Melbourne, getting us some era score. Era score, very briefly, is just something that determines for the next era, which is determined by averaging out the technological and civic progress of the civilizations in the game, how your empire will be doing. So Dark Age, your cities won't be as loyal, and it'll be harder to keep them loyal. Normal Age, your cities will be normally loyal, I guess, and Golden Age, your citizens will be particularly loyal, and it'll be easier to keep your empire cohesive and potentially even steal other empires' cities through loyalty drain. Right, so enough about that. We've settled here in Melbourne. Our warriors were damaged in the fight, so we're going to let them rest for a little bit, and we're going to contemplate even further our next steps. We have now the opportunity to discover new technologies. Since we're in the desert, this isn't like strictly, determined by the game or anything. Let's go ahead and research bronze working, because that's going to give us iron, and iron is sometimes more likely to be found in deserts. This one's fairly small, so I'm not expecting to see a whole lot of iron, but you never know. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and build us a granary, because of all this desert, the city's going to grow pretty slowly. But if we manage to keep this city sort of competitively productive, I guess is how I'll put it, we'll be able to make this work, hopefully, and we'll be able to reach Petra and get all that other good stuff. I've also sent a builder down there. Yes, thank you, Netherlands, for your input. I've sent a builder to help us improve this silver resource, right, as you can see. And I've been exploring with my scout out here. So let's just automate some of its exploration. Ooh, a promotion. This isn't going to feature too heavily in the video, but combat units get promotions when you fight enough stuff. So we'll get a generic sort of boost to combat. These couple of turns are also important because of foreign trade, which is a civic, which we haven't talked a whole lot about. But basically, civics are the cultural equivalent of technologies, right? We have a whole civic tree, and what the civics allow us to find are basically these new government policies, which are represented by these little cards that can be either purple or golden or red or green. Here we go. And what they allow us to do is make our government. Now, foreign trade will give us access to a trader, and traders will allow us to make trade routes, and trade routes can be between two cities within the same empire, a city and a city-state, or two different cities in two different empires. The reason that this is going to come particularly handy for us is because when you establish trade routes between two cities within the same empire, those cities, or the origin city, pardon me, gains food and production. Let's go ahead and research this boosted civic. And let's take a look at if we can actually buy the trader. Now, some people might feel an aversion to spending money this early on, because it's like that's over half our budget basically right now. Or, yeah. But that money exists to be spent. If you don't spend it, you're just sitting on it, and right now this could give us a boost that we could really, really use. Right, so we have a granary being researched. We have our builder ready to help boost our production next turn. We have our trader ready to go next turn. Purchased units. You can't basically do anything with them until the turn after they're purchased. And I'm going to send this warrior down here to hopefully take care of this barbarian encampment, because I want to take this whole coast for my empire. Alright, I'm going to cut the video here. This will be the end of part 3, and hopefully the next time I see you, I will have made a heap more progress, and I'll also be talking to you about governors and city-states in greater detail.